Following video, I speak with my good friend Alex. He's an English teacher with a background in ecology. We speak mostly about the subject mechanistic justifications for claims made particularly in science, but also in everyday life. This conversation started off much earlier, several months ago, when I was complaining about the use of mechanistic justifications for claims made. I don't think it's proper to use solely mechanistic justifications. I see it used a lot by day-to-day people in their conversations when they're explaining why they believe something, and it bothers me because I don't think that's a correct way to justify claims. Everything has a justification at the end of the day. Everything has a mechanism at the end of the day. I just don't think a purely mechanism-based justification is proper for a claim. You'll see why as we talk about it. I also have to apologize for the format. This was a very casual conversation, and this is why I'm recording this preemptive introductory, as I completely failed to make any introductory comments in the following video. Okay, we are now recording. Yay. Thanks for your patience. Yeah, so let's talk about everything we just talked about again. I thought we disagreed on more, so now it's less interesting because we completely agree.
Yeah, it ended up being more of a problem of semantics, I think. You were referring to science as the scientific method, and I was just talking about everything science-y lumped into one word.
Which, admittedly, is how most people use the word. Basically, the way this whole conversation started was a while ago, I was talking to you, right, about mechanistic explanations for different phenomenon you see in life. And I was saying, like, hey, mechanistic explanations are stupid. We shouldn't use them as justification for claims.
Right.
And I don't think I explained...
You didn't have the words to quite put your thoughts into a way that we could understand.
Correct. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. So really what I meant to say is, everything is caused by mechanisms. There's a reason things happen, basically. But my claim was, hey, if your only justification for a claim, if the reason you believe a claim is that there's this mechanism for it, that's preposterous because, depending on the field, it's preposterous. So let's say biology, that's very dumb because, in my opinion, it's very dumb to use mechanistic only explanations because biology is really complicated. We only understand a small portion of like human biology, let's say. And so if you say, oh, because our organs work this way, then we should eat these kind of foods. Or let's talk, I think I give the example of a bird. Oh, a bird's organs are such and such, so the bird should eat this food. And it's like, okay, well, like technically that's a proper mechanistic explanation, but there's like 400 other variables going on. You misunderstood the way that the bird's organs worked, etc. Right?
Yes, yeah. And definitely the less information you have, the worse and worse this effect can be.
Right. Like, there are mechanistic explanations for things, but they, originally when you're trying to come up with a claim, your reason for that claim shouldn't be a mechanism. You gave, you were talking about, can you talk about bears and how they have...
Yeah. Like I was talking about how, like say someone got a pet bear and they see that this grizzly bear, first off it's the grizzly bear, so they're known to be mean. He's heard that they're mean. And so they've got these big teeth and they've got these sharp claws and they're mean. So therefore they must only eat meat and only ever eat meat, and they'll be perfectly fine if you just feed them meat. And he feeds this bear, steak and chicken and fish every day until the bear dies. And it's because he made an observation, and because of some mechanics that he saw, or some structures that he saw, he assumed the mechanics behind them and killed his bear because he didn't realize that bears also eat plants and need plants in their diet.
I love the example. So like the mechanism in this case, let's just simplify it and say it was the bear's teeth. The bear had lots of sharp teeth. So that was his mechanistic justification for believing the claim bears only eat meat, or bears are carnivores, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And we both agree that's dumb and people should avoid doing that and the reason is, right, I think because like things are complicated. Life is complex. Like you can come up with, you can say something like, and be like, oh, that makes sense. If you ever catch yourself saying that makes sense, that's usually a red flag for me.
Yeah.
Because lots of things make sense that aren't true, you know? And like we see that in science, like there's tons of things that are facts and we don't know why.
That's string theory in a nutshell.
Yeah.
All these really hardcore string theorists, you know, believe in string theory because it makes sense, although there hasn't been any concrete observational anything that actually proves string theory in the slightest. You know, there's things that string theory explains well, but there's lots of things explain well that aren't true.
Okay. I don't know anything about string theory, so I'm going to take your word for that. What you're saying totally makes sense, though. The only thing I know about string theory is that string theory is to quantum mechanics what quantum mechanics is to classical physics.
Yes.
Or at least that's how they feel.
Except that quantum mechanics has experimental data to validate it.
Oh yeah, no, quantum mechanics is actually like real. Quantum physics is empirically true.
Right. String theory is not at that point, at least not at the moment.
Got it. I guess I'm referring to the personalities of each philosophy. So in epistemology, there's a claim, and then you have justification. You have not a good reason, because we've seen time and time again that mechanistic explanations can be, you know, posited originally, and then we do science, and it's nothing like we expected, and we find really conclusive results in the science, but there's still no mechanism for it. We just know that it wasn't the original mechanism, right? Science is kind of like rudimentary, right? Like all we're doing, it's so elementary and juvenile almost. We're just literally, we're not trying to figure anything out. We're just like looking at stuff for a long time, recording it, doing some stats, and then saying, okay, here's the data. This is what it looks like. And you're not trying to be smart. You're not trying to be like, oh, well, because of this makes sense. Because that just doesn't work. Like in, you know, the scientific method is what we've developed after, you know, thousands of years of epistemology trying to figure out the best way to do things. And it's funny that we've come up with the scientific method as the best way, because the scientific method is it's kind of like, it's unsophisticated. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying it's the best and practically only way to figure out the objective truth for sure, because life is so complicated that trying to come up with mechanistic justifications is just silly.